All right, welcome to another episode of Civic Punks, the Something Cool series, and I'm very excited to talk to my good friend James here about something that I love that he's been doing for years called UKGovCamp. But before we dive into that, James, why don't we, who are you? Tell me about yourself. I mean, tell the audience about. I know you well, but
yeah. Hello everyone, I'm James Cattell. What can I tell you about myself? I became a public servant in 2008 after 15 years working in the private sector, mostly in financial services, seeing silly people lose a lot of money. And so to cleanse my soul, I started my public service in 2008, 5 years in local government and then the rest of it in central government. And I'm currently have this awesome job title of a design-led engagement specialist in the pensions regulator, where I'm setting up and managing a working group of 15 people and then also a wider community, which will be really awesome.
Well, and I mean, this is one of the ways that I got to know you, James, is through your community work. You've been sort of a real mentor of mine when it comes to, an inspiration for me when it comes to building community within the context of government. And so you were involved. I think the first time we met was actually through One Team Gov. Back in the day, was that probably 2018, 2019, somewhere around then. And then through UKGovCamp, which is what I really want to chat with you about, because I think it's really cool. I think everybody should know about UKGovCamp. In fact, I think every country should have their own GovCamp. And so one of my goals is to go back to Canada and see if we can create a GovCamp in Canada. But why don't we start there, actually? What is GovCamp?
Yeah, so I find the camp bit a bit annoying because often when people hear it for the first time, they're like, oh, we're going camping? What? In the middle of January? So what I like to say is, well, don't think about camp as in that. Think about camp as in campus, as in coming together and learning from each other. And often when I say that, like, oh, that makes sense. Okay. But actually, the camp comes from a thing called bar camp. A long time before UK GovCamp, there was bar camp. And it is basically you come together, and if it's your first time there, you need to talk. And you talk about something, and then maybe there's a Q&A. So Barcamp London has been going for a long time, so you can go and check out what they do. Well, last time I went, it was a lot of people giving talks, and I'm not really a fan of that because I'm more interested in sitting in a circle and listening and talking to each other, which is what UK GovCamp is about. So if you think to like a traditional conference you go to, you normally know where it is, when it is, you've bought your £500 ticket, there's an agenda, you know who's going to talk about what, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the organisers have checked the people that are speaking can actually speak well. They've checked their slides aren't full of rubbish, and you get that moment where someone goes, well, you probably can't read this, but let me talk you through it, as their 12-point text fills the screen, I find that annoying, and I've been to too many of those where I just think, oh my god. So, GovCamp turns that model on its head. It's based on a brilliant piece of facilitation technique called open space technology, which was created by the awesome Owen Harrison. I get his name wrong, who sadly passed away a year or two ago. But his work and his spirit lives on. And as I said, the whole idea is rather than me facing you as you tell me about something, everybody in the room faces each other in a circle or an oval. And we have discussions. We don't get talked at, which I love. So a big part of this is, well, hang on, where's the agenda? Like, I don't know who's going to talk about what. That sounds a bit scary, what's going to happen. To which you say, like, don't worry, there is a theme. Like all camps or all open space events have a theme. So for UK GovCamp, it's about people interested in making the public sector better. Simple as that. It used to be a bit more sort of web and tech focused, but nowadays we've tried to broaden it out so that policy people, operational people can come and join themselves as well as delivery people like myself. So we have this theme and we have this empty agenda, this empty structure, which is all the different rooms. In GovCamp we have about 8 or 9 different rooms. And then all the different times. We have 2 slots in the morning and 3 slots after lunch, which are 45 minutes long. Always have breaks between them. So in total, we're normally doing about 40 or so sessions in a day. And then so at the start of the day, people are asked, do they want to pitch something to everybody that's there? And so people queue up and you'll come to the front, you'll stand, you've got 30 seconds to tell everyone about the thing you want to discuss. And then at GovCamp, there'll be a show of hands just so we can gauge which sized room that discussion should go in. And then that carries on for about half an hour until we filled up this empty grid with lots of things that are going to get discussed. One of the big things about GovCamp was we're always trying to make it more accessible. How can more people, different types of people with different needs, attend it and still have a good time? So we have tried in the past a less nerve-wracking version of what I've just talked about. So rather than standing at the front in front of 200 people and telling them, We've tried alternatives to that where actually you're just standing talking to one person, along with other things. So we've introduced a creche, so people with child responsibilities, childcare responsibilities can still come. We try to always use venues that are wheelchair accessible. We try to make sure that there is a note taker and a facilitator in every single session that can help you. We try to make sure the food, we account for everybody's needs. And then the thing that we still haven't quite cracked yet, which hopefully we're going to crack at the next one, is the pre-event reception and the post-event reception is held somewhere that everybody can attend. So, for example, I just can't go into a busy pub with lots of noise. My brain doesn't work like that. And we have colleagues for religious reasons, for example, that can't go into that. So that's one of the last things that we're going to have that hasn't really been done properly. We're going to have a crack at for the next event. Also, UKGovCamp has traditionally either been held in London or online ever since its birth, all the way back in 2007, I think the first one was. And as one of my last things before I retire from being an organiser, again, I think this is the second or third time I've retired, I've managed to push everyone to do it outside of London. So we're going to be in Birmingham City Council's Council House in the centre of Birmingham in January, which I'm very happy about for two reasons. First of all, it's not London, and second of all, it's my hometown. So yeah, that's kind of a walkthrough of GovCamp.
Well, I think the thing that stood out for me, so I've been to lots of different conferences and all sorts of different places. Yeah, you definitely get sort of the talking heads. Oftentimes, I think the experience a lot of people have is the best part of conferences isn't the talks. It's the conversations you have along the side, the conversations you have, in the mornings and over lunch and stuff like that. And, what UK GovCamp does, using the unconference model is it really centers those conversations. Like if those are the best parts, let's make that what this is all about. And I remember the first time I went to a GovCamp and I'm like, what's going on here? At the beginning, particularly with the what's the agenda going to be, and then you just see this giant lineup of people, and it's just so interesting to hear what people want to talk about. And I have to say, there's some wizardry you guys do with the board where you are putting discussions together in different places, and that there's an artistry I find to actually building the agenda from all these different pitches that people are making. But the outcome has always been, the conversations are so rich. You are guaranteed to have an interesting conversation. The other thing that I find really interesting about it is that instead of the talking heads model, it kind of give you ideas. A lot of conferences are good at what are the best practices of these really interesting things that are happening in governments around the world. That's not what UK GovCamp is about. UK GovCamp is about what are the challenges that we are facing as a community? What are some things that we could do together to shift the way that government works within our context? It's much more, I feel, action focused. It's much more about what the community needs, and it's much more grassroots, which I really enjoy. I love it. I love it so much. How have you seen? Actually, first question first. How did it start? What was the thing that drove the first GovCamp? So you talked about Barcamp as an inspiration, but what caused it to tip into GovCamp?
Yeah, there's a brilliant guy called Jeremy Gould, Gould, who I think it was around 2007, 2008, been going around government, having lots of different meetings with different people, and thought, wouldn't it be great to get them all in the same place at the same time and have a group discussion? And so really, the genesis comes from Jeremy wanting to bring all those interesting conversations into one place. And so in 2008, the first GovCamp was held at Google's offices in London. And there was about 105 people signed up for that. 35 sessions were had, and there were 5 parallel tracks. There were 5 conversations going on at the same time. And then it's been done every year since 2008, either in Google, Ministry of Justice. It was Microsoft's offices for a couple of years. We were at IBM's beautiful office on the South Bank. Beautiful, but it's a bit small. Only 150 people could go. And then we've been at City Hall on the South Bank, National Audit Office in Victoria for a couple of years. NAO's offices are beautiful. Ministry of Justice has been host the most. Their awesome conference space in the lower ground floor of 102 Petty France is brilliant. We have also gone big. So in 2004, we hired a hotel conference suite in the City of London, and we had 700 sign-ups for that. So that was like GovCamp XL. You normally get about 50% dropout rate because it's free. So we actually got about 350 people. And then last year, or rather this year, it's 2005, went back to Ministry of Justice again and had 230 people. So yeah, started because of Jeremy basically in 2007, and then the first one was in 2008.
So you've been involved with it how long have you been involved with the organizing?
it's because I had this brilliant colleague in Birmingham City Council called Simon Whitehouse who introduced me to Twitter before it became X. And so I think I joined Twitter in 2010 and very quickly found this tribe of people. So the first one I went to was a local GovCamp at the National Railway Museum in York. And it was brilliant. It was incredible. And then someone told me about UKGovCamp. And I think the first one I went to was either 2010 it was 2011, because that was the first time it was at Microsoft. And it blew my mind. And I found it very difficult to go back to a traditional conference after that. And so 2012 is the first time I put my hand up and said, let's do something. And my session was actually more of a hackathon than it was a discussion. And it was to try and go through all of the pictures that had ever been taken since 2008 and figure out historically what were all the sessions that were talked about in which rooms on which years. And the culmination of that work is there was an incredible spreadsheet that you can view online which contains all of that information. And so if you go to bit.ly/UKGovCamp, all in lowercase, no spaces obviously, you can get to that session grid, and that's one of the things I'm really glad I did. I love data, and it's great, particularly for trying to persuade people who don't really want to come. They think, I don't like it, there's no structure. You can go, ha ha ha, here is a spreadsheet. And public servants love spreadsheets. So yeah, that's one of the things I'm proud of, is like, here is all the historic data, everything that's ever been talked about at GovCamp.
Yeah, I have to say that spreadsheet is amazing because it's kept up to date. Like, it is live now, like, as in it has the sessions from this past year and going all the way back. And I think that's really interesting about it as well is I think for the last 10 or 12 years, it also has the notes that were taken in all the discussion. Like that data set is phenomenal. I'm like, I don't know what to do with it yet, but it's just really, every once in a while, it's interesting to go in and be like, you see how things evolve and like different topics become really hot, a couple of years, like lots of discussions about this thing, and then they kind of fade away, and then they come back a couple of years later, and you can kind of see the waves of what issues rose at what times. So thank you. It's an amazing data set.
And it's really interesting. Harrison Owen, that is his name because I've just checked, who came up with the concept of open space technology. It wasn't until a few years after I started doing that spreadsheet, I read his book. And in his book, it talks about, I didn't read it, I listened to it because I don't really read. I listened to his book, and it talks about, after each session, people come out and they sit at this bank of computers and type in their notes. And then at the end of the thing, it's all printed out into a booklet, and everyone is given the booklet. And so coincidentally, I had come to that same concept of trying to document some of it and make it available that Harrison came up with. And so, yeah, in that spreadsheet over on the far column, there is a link to those collaborative documents, and you can get in. And I just started doing it because I thought it would be a good idea. But I've had people come back and say, do you know how incredibly useful that is? I can take that back to the office on Monday and show my team, and it has an impact. So it's like, great. I'm glad to hear it.
So one of the things you had mentioned earlier is that you said how the first time you went to UKGovCamp, you went and it just blew your mind. I want to sort of drill down on that a bit more. Like, what about it really stood out for you? Like, what about it was the thing that blew your mind?
So at that point, 2011, I still had, and I don't use this word lightly, I had crippling social anxiety. I remember the year after that, I joined the Government Digital Service, and in an open forum asked a question to Tim O'Reilly, the Tim O'Reilly. And as I was asking it, my whole body was shaking. And then when he was talking to me, I was like twitching. So what really blew my mind about going to GovCamp for the first time is a lot of that social anxiety just started to fall away, because I was around people I sort of already knew from Twitter, some people I'd met at local GovCamp, people that I'd been chatting with in other forums, and I felt a lot more comfortable and a lot more confident. So I actually, the first year I didn't pitch a session, but I did start to join in other discussions and ask questions. And I found that I wasn't like shaking uncontrollably. And so that's one of the things, is just feeling like I found my tribe and I feel like I can be myself, and I don't have to mask and pretend to be somebody else. But also is the fact that I didn't have to sit still and look at someone talking. I could listen and I could join in, sitting in a circle. So, yeah, those two things, like feeling more confident and being able to actually have a discussion. It was just incredible. I had no concept of this before I went to the first one in local government. I thought you just turned up and you sat and you listened to an expert. Whereas actually the room is full of experts when you're having a discussion like at UKGovCamp.
So, I mean, it's been 15, 16, or 15, 14, 15 years. It's been several. What are some of your other favorite memories over the years from GovCamp that stick with you?
Well, the number one memory is that's where I met my partner, the
That's
awesome
true.
Janet
That's
Hughes.
true. Great for dating. Great for finding life partners. Love it.
You can see why I'm a little bit biased towards GovCamp. Not that we don't have our faults, don't get me wrong. But yeah, like coming out of the 2011 one at Microsoft, Louise Kidney, who was a colleague at the Government Digital Service, introduced me to Janet. And yeah, it's just like, she's awesome. And Janet and I ended up working at GDS at the same time. And yeah, she blew my mind completely. She's just an incredible human being. And so, yeah, thanks, GovCamp.
Glowing endorsement for GovCamp. What about some other ones, though?
I think the things I'm really proud of, like I said, is trying to make it more accessible, trying to make access to GovCamp fairer, and then also seeing it spawn other camps, related to camps. And then one of the great things about GovCamp is quite often we raise more money than we need. And so what we do is we push that back into the community through the UKGovCamp grant fund, which anybody can apply to as long as you meet the criteria on the application form. And so there's usually a rush after the event in January of people applying, can I have money for this or that or this? So we have helped Open Data Camp, we've helped UK Health Camp, we've helped Blue Light Camp, we've helped UK Charity Camp, which I'm going to in a few weeks' time, which I'm really looking forward to. There are loads of these other things and hackathons and just meetups that we've managed to help because of this seed fund that we can give people, which I'm very, very proud of. But yeah, the accessibility thing. So when I first tried to join a GovCamp, we were doing this terrible thing of like, here is a tranche of tickets at this time, on this day, you need to go and scrabble to try and get a ticket. And quite often, as GovCamp has got more mature and more popular, those tickets go in seconds. 50 or 60, 100 tickets, they're just gone like that in less than a minute. So if, like me, you've got like some mental health challenges, you've got neurodiversity, you've got poor executive planning, you can't get there and you're not ready, you're not focused, you lose your chance to get a ticket. And so one of the things I'm very proud of introducing, and it's a really good memory, is the idea of having a lottery. So we always oversell GovCamp by 50%, like I said, because of dropout. So once we get past that, so for example, the one in Birmingham, we've sold 325 tickets. And actually, it's perfect because we've just closed it and we'll give all those people a ticket. But if we had sold 400 or 500 tickets, we would then do a lottery and we'd randomly pick 325 people from that total and then give them a ticket or give them like a couple of weeks to claim a ticket. I personally think that's a lot fairer than trying to scrabble to get a ticket and fail. Not everyone agrees, but tough. Become an organizer if you want to run it your way.
I mean, that has been like my way of making sure I get it to GovCampus. I always volunteer. That's and it works. It works. It's really good. What over the years? What are the different changes you've made to GovCamp, and what caused you to make those changes? Like, how have you seen it evolve?
Yeah, I think apart from the accessibility stuff, like one really important thing that's changed is I have become a better human being, a more level-headed human being that doesn't throw hissy fits and storm out of meetings, as happened in 2013 or 14. And I'm still very sorry to my fellow organisers for being such a insert word. So yeah, it's helped me grow as a human being. I think just seeing different organisers come and go that I've worked with. I think I became lead organiser in 2015, I think. And there's two or three that have just stuck around. So there's a longevity, corporate history, corporate knowledge. Like the awesome David Durant, he's brilliant. Mm-hmm. And what he does really well is he's always challenging what I say, which can be annoying, but also it's incredibly useful. There's almost like as a delivery manager, you're trying to use your ignorance of a situation to create a safe space, which I know sounds weird. So your ignorance helps you like ask nice simple questions. And so David's very good at, I wouldn't go so far to say he's ignorant, it's not that, but he's very good at asking simple questions and like, why are we doing that? So I don't remember. Can you remind me? And like, David's awesome. I'm glad that's a really good memory that David's been there for a long time. Vanessa Williams was with us for an awful long time. Not the singer, unfortunately, but the awesome office manager for DXW. So yeah, she was doing finance stuff and sort of treasury and budget stuff for a long time. So yeah, seeing other people come and go, having a go at GovCamp, some people staying. Yeah, it's an awesome event. And of course, like giving money to other events and then also kind of going helping them sometimes run it or consult for them on a free basis, obviously, and help them get set up. Like Open Data Camp is a really good example of that. So I was working in Cabinet Office on data.gov.uk, so I had a huge interest in open data. And so myself and a bunch of others set up that first Open Data Camp, which was in Winchester, and now they've just done their 10th one in Edinburgh, which is like fantastic. And it's still going strong. So that's another good memory, is because of that seed fund and because of being involved in other things, lots of other camps and unconferences have spun up.
So actually, I want to dig into the sort of the logistics of this, because one of the things you talked about is how you're able, that it's free and you're able to raise more money than you need, which allows you to give it to all sorts of different groups. I mean, Transform Gov Talks, we got funded by you, which is something David Durant and I work on together with Gavin Freegard and Jeff Allen and a couple others. But how do you pull that? Like, what's the financial model? How do you make that work?
Yeah, so the first time I got involved in the sponsorship side of this, because it's all done on sponsorship basically. People give us money because they know what we do and they're happy for us to spend it accordingly. I think it was like 2016 or 17. Myself and Alex Blankford, were basically we were at DXW's office, which was in Old Street, basically ringing everybody we knew or everybody that had ever given us money before, like, can you show us the money? You know, we need 500, 1,000. Can you do 2,000? 2,000 like this. And so, yeah, the model is basically we try and attract small or medium-sized businesses who do digital data and technology or transformation. There's also larger organizations like Fujitsu who have sponsored us before, some other big companies. But it's basically anybody who might have a stake in making the public sector better, particularly if it's a digital data or technology focus. And so this year, you can go to UKGovCamp.com and click on sponsors, and you can see already we've got, I think it's 7 or 8 sponsors who have pledged money. So we've already got £12,000 pledged, and we're still November, December. We're still 3 months away from the event. So yeah, building up a list of people who've sponsored us and then trying to find new entrants into the market who may want to give us between £250 and £2,000. And it's all thanks to them, basically. And sometimes, like, for example, with Ministry of Justice, that we will get basically a free venue. So we save a lot of money from people who host us as well. So Ministry of Justice, Google, Microsoft, all those people, they really, really do help. And quite often that'll include the catering as well would be free.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know about the catering. I think the thing I find interesting about it as well is like you really see the larger ecosystem, right? And like I remember walking into Ministry of Justice, and you've almost got like the vendor section you can walk through, and you get to meet all these different people, and there's all these discussions happening, and you see that the government isn't just public service. Government is all these different people and organizations and groups that are in and alongside trying to solve problems together. And it's interesting because I've been to other conferences and they have those vendor stalls that you go to, but it feels different. It's so much more transactional. It's so much more salesy. Yeah. Whereas when I go to it at GovCamp, it's like just hanging out with friends. It feels different, and I don't know how you do it. It's really interesting.
One thing we say to sponsors, and again, you can go to the sponsors page on gov.uk, and then there's a sub-page called Become a Sponsor. And on there, you'll see the kind of rules that we have. One of which is, do not ram your shit down people's throats. I'm sorry, you can't do hard sales pitches. If you try and do that, even if it's in the sales marketplace, that's not good. You know, you're happy to pitch a session, but again, we don't do hard sales, please. And we're not going to give you the names and email addresses of people who've attended. We're definitely not doing that. So this is basically it's a community thing. You know, it's for the community of people that are interested in making the public sector better together. So if you want to support that, and if you want to, this year I think it's platinum. So if you give us £1,500, you can have a stall in the marketplace. And we try to have a really good conversation with sponsors and make sure they understand, you can't be taking down people's names and addresses, and you just come with some lovely evergreen marketing things, like come with notebooks and pens and sweets and stuff, and just have a conversation and enjoy yourself. We allow sponsors to have up to 4 tickets. So again, they can come and either man the marketplace stand or go to sessions. But it's really important is that you need to have a community spirit to be involved in this. Don't expect to be coming away with a new funnel of sales. Just now that I work in the pensions industry for the pensions regulator, I went to the Pensions UK annual conference in Manchester last week or the week before, and there is an entire hall, like the size of 2 or 3 football pitches, that is just full of stands. Huge, like some of them, like the JP Morgan stand was incredible. Like at lunchtime, they were serving homemade pizzas out the back of their stand. They had a bar. They had these lovely notebooks, which I've got several of, and I put stickers over the JP Morgan logo. I mean, the level of just like food and booze, my God, there was so much alcohol from like 3 p.m. onwards, and the merch and stuff. It's a whole like up here. In GovCamp, we're down here. Like my other half, Janet, used to be the director of merch for UKGovCamp at one point, and her defining act was to abolish merchandise. So I think it's only this year, now we're in Birmingham, now we're somewhere different, we might actually do some merch again, because it's a special thing, right? It's the first time it's been outside of London properly. So
really interesting. So okay, say I am actually, this is not even say I am interested in this. I want to start my own GovCamp. What advice would you give to me to help me sort of get off on the right foot?
I have started writing this up, actually, with your help and other people. So there's a little bit, if you go to my personal website, cattell.com, CATTELL.com, and click on unconference, I kind of started writing up a little bit there. And I think the top 3 things are really, well, you need a space that is designed for these things. So you can't just have like one big room unless there are lots and lots of soft furnishings that will absorb noise. The best place is one big main space for everybody, and then smaller breakout rooms, like smaller meeting rooms, and preferably ones where you can close the door so the sound doesn't leach between different rooms. And then if you can get that set up, that's great. But you also need to, in each of those breakout rooms, you need to be able to move away the furniture, fold it all up and shove it against the wall, and then just have this sort of circle or oval of chairs where people are sitting facing each other. So that's kind of the kind of space that you need. Timing, well, I mean, you will know what is a good time for your thing. Yes, you need to be wary of holidays. And don't forget, different parts of the UK have different holidays at the different time. There's a really big judgment call about, do you do it during the working week, or like UK GovCamp, we do it on a Saturday. There are pros and cons for both. Just get to know your audience, get to know your potential attendees and ask them, basically. Or, as I've often done with stuff, I just pick a date that I think will work and just stick with it. So after the first One Team Gov conference in 2017, I'd always wanted to do a weekly meetup. And so I piggybacked on a date that I knew worked well, which was Wednesday breakfast. So in the civil service, there's a meeting called Wednesday Morning Colleagues, which happens at the same time. But it's just for like the top, like 0.1% of the civil service. So it's like the permanent secretaries, cabinet secretary, maybe a few involved. And they go and meet in Whitehall at the same time. So I thought, great, I'm never going to go to that meeting. I'm going to start my own one. And just so happened that it worked out really well. The space we had in HM Treasury worked really well. And also, the food was awesome. So the Her Majesty's Treasury canteen is really good. And that's another thing about trying to get it right. You're going to be asking people to come normally for a whole day. Sometimes I've seen them done for 2 days. Boy, that is exhausting. I really don't recommend you do 2-day conferences. But you're asking people to come for a whole day, so you need to give them food and drinks and refreshments, which then comes back to that sponsorship thing. You need some money or a venue that's going to give you that food for free. Space has to be right. You can figure out the time yourselves. That's up to you. You need to have food, like water on tap, and then at least a good lunch, but preferably snacks and stuff throughout the day as well. And then the other thing is, which is the precursor to all this, you need to have some people to organise it. You need at least 3 people, preferably no more than 10, like somewhere between 3 and 9 people. Try and keep it as an odd number of people, because that makes it easier to make decisions then. Although if you do end up with an even number of organisers, the lead organiser has the casting vote, basically. And these don't need to be professional event organisers. They just need to be like optimistic, relentless amateurs, basically, just willing to have a go. And so you need to find that venue, figure out the time, book all the food, and then figure out how you're going to promote it, how you're going to sell tickets. Obviously, they're normally free. And if you can do all of that for your first year, well done you. And then every time you do it after that, you're just trying to iterate it and make it more accessible, basically. Getting to know your audience. We need people. Are there people that can't come because they have childcare? Great. Let's get more sponsorship and we'll do a creche. Are there people that can't come because the building's inaccessible? So, right, well, next time we will get a wheelchair accessible building that has a lift to all of the different floors, or it'll all be on one floor. So constantly trying to make it more accessible, basically. And if you do those things, you'll be as successful as GovCamp, which has been going strong since 2008.
So I guess a question that comes to mind for me with this is, unlike most conferences, unconferences like GovCamp are discussion-based. Their richness comes from the engagement of all the people who are there. Public servants are notoriously skittish and shy, and for all sorts of good reasons. How has GovCamp created a space that enables, it's a safe space for public servants to sort of bring themselves to this space and not feel like they have to guard what they say or moderate what they say and just have a conversation with each other? And within the context of there being, businesses, consultants, all these different in the space as well. That's the magic sauce in some ways that I'm so curious about how you created that.
Well, I didn't create it. It's Jeremy that created it, and then Dave Briggs and Steph Gray that took over from him. But by the time I got involved, it was quite well established. Tickets would sell out straight away. I think it's important to know that anybody can apply for a ticket. And if there's a lottery, anybody can potentially get assigned a ticket via that lottery. We do not exclude based on your email address or who you work for. And so it is more than possible that in all the events we've ever done, there are journalists here. And that's cool. We're okay with that. GovCamp has ended up in the press before. So one of my fellow organisers, ex-organiser Sarah Baskerville, ended up on the front page of the Daily Mail. But she had an awesome director general, Claire Moriarty, who through that interaction with Sarah in the Daily Mail learnt about social media and ended up coming to GovCamp as an attendee several times. She was awesome. GovCamp's also ended up, I can't remember where it was, in the press. And we've been told as like the woke liberati, not liberati, what do you call it? The woke Twitterati, that was it. Running, here are all the people that run the government, basically, the shadow organisation, which is absolute nonsense.
I always laugh when I see stuff like that because I'm like, oh, you clearly have no idea how government works.
Yeah, you really don't. I think it's, is it Dave Gray in his book Game Storming? I saw Esko Rainokainen talk about this once at Designing Government. There is normally a formal bureaucracy, for example, the civil service, and then there is this informal network, for example, UKGovCamp. And the one thing cannot exist without the other. The formal bureaucracy has to have the informal stuff to help sort of get round blockers and stuff. And so these two things are really important. And that's why a lot of the people that come to GovCamp are civil servants, some of them senior civil servants, like people from across the public sector, business leaders. And it's very important. The other thing that we try and do to create a safe space is it is possible for you to start your discussion session and say, I do not want facilitation and I definitely don't want note taking. We're not doing that. You could also say that we're doing this under Chatham House rule, which means, yes, you can, after the discussion, go and talk about what was discussed here, but you cannot do it in a way that identifies anybody that's in the room. You can also do it completely off the record. And so you can say, well, in this discussion, you just can't talk about it elsewhere. That very, very rarely happens. There is a very popular session which almost happens every single year called Fail Camp. And the whole point is that you come to this session and you talk about something that you failed at. And then everybody gives you a round of applause, well done for sharing. And then somebody else has a go. That session is normally done under Chatham House rule, just in case whoever it is that's sharing, doesn't want their boss to find out. But I think the worry of sharing failure, I think it's a misnomer. I think it's heavily oversold, that concept. I think the more that you share your failure and particularly share how you learned from that failure, the better we all get. So I think we always encourage discussions about things that have gone wrong. I remember going to a session of talks, a bit like Transform Gov talks at Google a few years ago. And there were 5 speakers and the last speaker talked about how they'd really messed up. And it was the most interesting talk. And it just the visceral nature of how freely they were sharing about how badly it had gone and what they'd learned. It's just so much more interesting, than yay, we did our thing on time, hooray. It's like, well, actually, we messed up our budget. The digital service didn't work. The customers were pissed off. Like that, plus what we learned is just so much more interesting.
As I think about how to do this in Canada, it's one of the things I'm thinking about is how do you create that space? What does that look like? And I think part of it's role modeling, having some key people, having some senior people there that do some of the role modeling as well to create it safer for the younger public servants. But I'm just really curious because that's the challenging part.
It's already been done in Canada. GovCamp started in 2008, and then One Team Gov, which had a similar sort of mission, started in 2017. I think it was 2018 or 19. There was the first One Team Gov Global, where there was 500 people in London. And then a year or two later, there was One Team Gov Canada, which was the same thing, but in Canada. And the One Team Gov events use the same unconference model as UKGovCamp. Sometimes One Team Gov has more like extra facilitated bits around the side. But there are a bunch of people in Canada, such as like Rob Butler. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of people involved in One Team Gov Canada who are still there, still doing stuff that yourself and others can hook up with and do stuff in the Americas.
It's true. That is the plan. We also had a policy conference that was an unconference as well. And there's been pre-pandemic, there's a few events. There's a cluster of events, and then since the pandemic, everything's kind of gone to the wayside a bit. Well, James, this is amazing. Any final thoughts? Any final tips before we sign off for all the people listening about how they can start their own GovCamp?
I once got asked to go and talk about this at an event in China. I kid you not. And I stood up on stage in front of this brilliant audience, and after I'd talked about open space technology and conferences and the impact it's had on the public sector, somebody stood up and asked me, well, this sounds like chaos. How can this possibly work? To which I said, well, actually, we invite chaos. That's the whole point of it. We create this empty structure, this grid, this session grid of rooms and times, and it is up to you as an attendee to pour what you want to talk about into that structure and make it whole. And when you see someone who's afraid and says, I don't know what's going to happen, say that's okay. It's always like that. It's perfect. Don't worry about it. You just need to turn up. If you can turn up, it's awesome. It's always been awesome. And I've never seen an unconference or an open space technology not work. There is always somebody who wants to talk about something. There are always people that want to join the discussion and join in and try and learn and just have a go, basically. Just have a crack at it. Yes, the first few years maybe feel a bit awkward, but once you get into your stride of these things, GovCamp's been going since 2008 non-stop. We're always oversold. We always manage to raise sponsorship. There's always a grant fund, and you're always welcome to apply to the UK GovCamp grant fund to try and help you get started with your first unconference. And good luck.
Thanks so much, James. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to next UK GovCamp in January in Birmingham.
Yeah, 17th of January in Birmingham. Registration's closed, unfortunately, so there aren't any more tickets available, but there may be a wait list. So keep your eye out on ukgovcamp.com.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, James.
Thanks. Cheers.